Hello and welcome to this week's lesson on jQuery. So I downloaded a template. I'm going to change its name. I'm going to call it jQuery intro.html. I'm going to open it with my code editor. And I'm going to change the title first of all. I'm going to call it jQuery intro. And since I'm at it, I might as well just go back to the folder and open that up with Firefox. So let's go back to the editor. So for jQuery to work, if you've done the reading in your textbook and the tutorial, you know that it's a two-step process. The first thing we need to do is connect to the jQuery library. The jQuery library is just a collection of JavaScript scripts that really helped us out in creating very interesting effects, and they save us a lot of time. jQuery has been around for a long time and is probably used in most of the website around the world to create special effects. It's actually quite easy to learn, and you probably be wondering why we haven't done that from the beginning. Well, we need to get some of the JavaScript basics first, but you'll see how powerful jQuery is. So to connect to the jQuery library, first of all, I'm going to create a space here. So I'm going to enter a couple lines underneath title. And if you remember from the reading, there's two ways to do that. You can either download the jQuery library, it's one file, and save it in your folder and use script sourcing that file, or you can actually link to a location, and that's my the second solution we're gonna use. So I'm going to the browser and already connected to a site. It's called code.jquery.com, and that's where you can get also from other sites, but that's the one I usually use. And you have a list of different jQuery libraries. You see that it gives you both the uncompressed and the minified version of the same thing. So I'm going to take a peek what the uncompressed library looks like. So I'm going to click on this link and this file comes up. All it is, it's one file with all the jQuery information. It's quite a long file. You can keep on scrolling. If you notice here in my scroll bar how high up this element is, indicating the file is really very big. And if you're ever interested in how certain things are done, you can certainly read through this. But for our purposes, we're going to connect to the minified version. The minified version is a version where all the extra space is removed, all the comments are removed, and the file ends up being very small. So I'm going to click on this, and just to see, notice how it's all been compressed in 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 4 lines. Very, very long lines, obviously, but nonetheless 4 lines. So we're going to get the URL here. I'm going to copy this and go back to the code. So to connect to the jQuery library, I'm going to use script src for source quotes, and I'm going to paste the location. And then I'm going to close my script tag. And that's the first step. Second step, I'm going to open up another set of script tags. We're going to use the document ready function. The document ready function is a function that tells the browser to wait to execute the JavaScript code until the entire HTML page has been loaded. That makes it very handy because we can keep all the code together, and we don't have to intersperse the body section with bits of JavaScript code. It can all be in one location. But as I said, the browser will wait until, oh, I see I made a mistake here. That's a spelling, as always. I could tell right away because of the color of the code was different. So if you want to act upon or manipulate some HTML elements, you definitely want to wait until they have loaded. before you do something with that. Otherwise, if you were entering some JavaScript code in the head and you were trying to manipulate elements that are not loaded yet, well, your code wouldn't work. So to be able to use what is called a document ready function in jQuery, there is kind of a funny notation. First of all, you have to use a $sign. Then in parentheses, you put the word document. Outside the parentheses, you put period ready and open and close parentheses. Then inside the second set of parentheses, you're going to enter the word function, open and close parentheses, space, open and close curly braces. And then we are going to separate the curly braces, entering a couple lines like that. So this is the document ready function, and all the code is going to be entered in between those two lines. There's 4 different versions of this so-called document ready function. And if you look at other people's code, you would see it. So I have collected the 4 different versions of document ready function. So you might see it any fashion. So this is what we have, document ready function, and I might have done something wrong because I see that what I have here, see there's no, it's not blue. It's so easy to make mistakes. That's why I will from now on, instead of giving you the regular HTML5 template, I will give you HTML5 plus the document ready function in it. Let's just look at these 4 different functions. So this is more or less like I entered, and it says code enter here. You can also represent it this way, or using the word jQuery, or just simplified with the $sign and just the word function. Now what I'm going to do, just going to copy this line, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to paste it right here. It's still dark, so I don't know exactly what I did. I will find out. All right, so all the code is going to come inside the document ready function. So what we're going to do now, so we have something to manipulate, we're going to enter 4 paragraphs with heading. I'm going to come into the body section, I'm going to enter a line, and I'm going to have an H2 tag. I'm going to say first paragraph. And I'm going to enter a P tag, and I want to take some, just enter some dummy text. So I'm going to use lorem ipsum, and I already have a tab open. So lorem ipsum is just some dummy text, and I went to loremipsum.net. There's also many other websites where you can just copy and paste this text. It is actually Latin, and it's been used for centuries by typographer to have placeholder text when where they needed to figure out the layout or something, but they didn't have the real text. So I already have it highlighted. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to paste into my code and just clean it up a little bit so that I have it nicely organized. I'm going to give my paragraph an ID. I'm going to call it par 1 for paragraph 1. Now I'm going to copy these 2 lines, and I'm going to paste it 3 times below. And I'm going to just edit this a little bit. So instead of saying first paragraph, the second heading is going to say second. Let's see. Second paragraph, I'm going to change the part 1 to part 2. I'm going to change the third one to third, and part 3, and the last one to fourth paragraph, and the part 4. So just that we have a little bit of HTML so we can play around with. I just want to take a look at this and see what it looks like. So I need to open this. I thought I opened it before. Let me go back. I guess I hadn't given the title. So I have to, there we go. So I have Firebug open. I want to make sure that I have my code validated. So I'm going to display the page validation. There we have a nice little check mark. And I have my 4 paragraphs with headings. All right, so if I ask you at this point, I would like you to change the color of the first paragraph And with the knowledge you have so far, you'll be able to do it. So let's do it the way we've been doing so far. Okay, so if I wanted to have my first paragraph changed to red, I could just use regular JavaScript and use document get element by ID style and change it that way. Now I have to make sure that I don't run that script before the browser has finished loading all the HTML page. So what I would have to do, enter that information after the script has been loaded. So that's what I'm going to do. So if I wanted to affect this script, as I said, I need to make sure just by using regular JavaScript that I give the browser a chance to load the element that I actually want to change. So I'm going to have a script tag right here, and I'm going to have the closing script tag. And I'm going to say document get element by ID. The ID or the element I want to change, ID instead of YD. The element I want to change is par1, so I'm going to enter that ID. And we've seen that we can enter period, style, and the name of the property we want to change is color, in this example, color. And we want to change it to red. Let me create a little bit of space here so it's a little more clear what I'm doing. So this is my little script. It's one line. I'm getting hold of the element with an ID of par1, which happens to be this paragraph right here, and I want to change its color. So we know how to do that with style color. So I'm going to save that and go back to the browser and reload this. And there we go, and it works. So we knew how to do that. Now, if I want to do this instead, let's say I want to change the color of the second paragraph, but I want to use jQuery to do that. How to do that? So I told you that you got to put all the jQuery code inside the document ready function. So I know I have to come in here. And because we use this document ready function, although I enter my code in the head and the rest of the page has been loaded yet, this function prevents the code to run until all the rest of the HTML page is being loaded. So that's why you can enter all the code in the head section. Having said that, what do we do in jQuery? Doing something in jQuery, it's a two-step process. First, you got to select the element you want to modify, then you do something with that. And to select an element is actually very simple syntax. You use the $, parentheses, and inside the parentheses with quotes, you're going to use either the ID or the class or just the general name of the element. Let's say I want to get a hold of the element with the ID of par2. What I'm going to do, enter my quotes, and inside the quotes, I'm going to use the hash sound par2. And it looks very much like it did when, if you're familiar with CSS, you might be able to start recognizing something. As a matter of fact, jQuery does use CSS selector. That's why it is so intuitive to be able to select something. So that's the first step. You select an element, and what do you do with that? So if I wanted to change the color of the second paragraph, I can use, instead of using style color, we enter the name of this data function is .css, and in parentheses, and then semicolon after. Inside the parentheses, we're going to enter first the name of the property, which is color, comma, and then the name of the value. I'm going to turn it to blue. So you select something and you use a $, you put that element, the ID, the class, the name of the element, whatever you choose to select inside the parentheses. Once you have a selection, then you decide what to do with that. In this particular case, we use the function CSS to change the font color to blue. So I'm going to save that and go back to the browser and reload. And the second paragraph is blue. Okay, what else can we do with this? I gave you a handout, actually several handouts, and one of them is an image, and it's just a cheat sheet. and I have it open right here. So what this is a jQuery cheat sheet, and it's divided in section. There's many other different cheat sheets out there. So this is one. This is the one I like. Doesn't mean that it has to be the only one you'll be using, but I like the way this is organized. So the first section here is selectors. It gives you an idea what you can use for selector inside that first parenthesis with a $sign outside. So what I actually use is the first one right here, the ID. You need to put a hash right in front of it. So you can just use the name of the tag. That's the next example we're going to do. I'm going to go back out to the code. So let's say I want to change all the text of all the paragraphs to a different font. So I'm going to enter a new line. I'm going to enter my $sign, parenthesis. And inside the parentheses, I have quotes. And I want to change all the paragraphs. So I can just use, so if I was to create a CSS style, I know I can just use the name of the element. In this case is paragraph, so I use just a P. This will select all the paragraph in this document. And I want to change the color. Oh, actually I said the font. So I'm going to enter CSS. And I'm going to change the font, family, comma. So first the property, and exactly like you entered in CSS, and I want to change it to Helvetica. Or if that doesn't work for you on your system, you can try any other font. Semicolon, save this, go back out to the browser, and keep close attention to the way this font looks. So when I'm going to reload, there we go. All the paragraphs have been changed to that different font, to Helvetica. So far, you might be wondering, well, what the heck? I could have done this just with CSS from the very beginning. Why do I need to use jQuery with this? This is just an example, and I'm not really using any logic associated with the changes. But imagine for a second if you had an if statement that says that maybe you figure out the time of the day, and based on the time of the day, or maybe based on the month of the year, then you change the style of your page. So combining logic and the power of jQuery, you can really do a lot. Besides changing the style, you can also manipulate the text. Let me go back to that cheat sheet here. So what we've done here, we use the CSS function to modify the some of the properties. I can also modify the content of a paragraph, for example, and I can use text for a function. So I'm going to go back to my code editor, and I'm going to select something else. I'm going to actually give one of the paragraphs. I'm going to choose the fourth paragraph, and I'm going to give it a class of special. So that's a little bit different, because I want to show you that you can select an element not just by its ID, not just by its generic name. You can also select it using the name of a class. So I'm going to enter my $sign, and I'm going to enter my quote. So if I want to select all the elements that have a class of special, I enter the period and the word special, indicating that it's a class. If it was an ID, I would have had to use a hash sign. And in this particular case, we only have one paragraph that has a class of special. But if there were more elements that had a class of special, all those elements with a class of special will be selected. Okay, what do I want to do with that? I want to change the text of that paragraph. So I'm going to use the word text, which is a function, and I'm going to tell the browser that inside that text, I want to substitute what is there right now, which is this lorem ipsum paragraph, with some other content. I'm going to just say, make it very simple, and just say, this is new content. Sure, I have my quotes balanced. I'm going to save that, and I'm going to come out to the browser, and right now I have lorem ipsum in the fourth paragraph, but when I reload, I have new content. Let's go back to the code editor. Okay, so this is all good and fine, but really it's not as useful. As I said, number one, we didn't use any logic. Number two is actually much more interesting when something happens only after the user does something. Those are called, when the user does something, it's called event. The only event we know so far is click. So when the user clicks on something, we can make something else happen. And we seen that last week. So if I was to create, if I didn't have jQuery and I want to have a button that when somebody clicks on it, changes the first paragraph to red, then I got to create a function. Well, first of all, let me create my button. I'm going to put it at the top. I'm going to say change to red. And then I'm going to create a new script section because I'm going to use just plain JavaScript. And I just want to make it clear that it's something else. I don't have to use a new script tag, but I can. So visually, it's a little bit easier for me and for you to follow. So I know how to create a function, and we've seen that to create a function, I had to use the generic word function, and then I have to come up with a name for my function. I'm just going to call it change to red. Then it takes parentheses after that and open and close curly braces. Inside the curly braces, I'm just going to copy and paste this bit of JavaScript code because that's what I want to use. So I'm going to copy from here and put inside my function. So this is only executed when somebody clicks on a button. Now, just to be clear, to be safe, I'm going to comment out that bit of code there. So this is only the first step. I created my function. Now, how do we call a function? We got to call its name, but I won't enter its name, but I want that function to be called when somebody clicks on a button. We've seen that last week, so I can come inside the opening tag of the button, enter some space, and I'm going to say on click equal open and close quotes. On click, I want the function change to red to be called change to red. And there's no parameters, so the parenthesis is going to stay open. I'm going to save that, and I want to see what it looks like. I'm going to reload that. So my first paragraph did not have the red applied to it. It still has all the other changes we made, which is the change in font. So if I click on this button now, the text turns to red. And you can do exactly the same thing in jQuery. The syntax is slightly different. So let's say I don't want these changes that we created in a document ready function, I don't want them to be applied immediately as soon as the document is being loaded. I want these changes to be applied only after the user clicks on a button. So I'm going to create another button. And I'm going to say apply changes. You know that the text you enter there is completely up to you, what you say. And I'm going to give this button an ID. I'm going to call a second button. Maybe make the B capitalized so it's a little bit easier to read. Okay, so let's think about the logic. I want something to happen. I want the changes to be applied when the user clicks on the second button. So in jQuery, you always have to start with a selector. What do you want to happen? What is going to happen? The user is going to click on a button. There's an ID of second button, and then something's going to change. So to get hold of my element, I'm going to come inside the document ready function. So I said I want all of this code to be executed only when the user clicks on a button. So I'm going to put all of this code inside a function, and this is called the click function. I'm going to start with my selector, $, and I said when the user clicks on the second button, with the element with an ID of second button. So I know how to do that. I can select the element with an ID of second button. And I said when the user clicks on it. So I'm going to use the word click and then open and close parentheses, semicolon. Inside the parentheses, I'm going to have to enter function, parentheses, space, open and close curly braces. Sort of like the same syntax that we have for the function ready, for the document ready function. Okay, all of this code, these 3 lines, have to come inside the curly braces. So what I'm going to do first, separate my curly braces, and I'm going to copy and basically move this code inside the function. And I want to indent it, so I guess it doesn't want me to do that way. I'm going to indent it so it's clear that that code is inside that function. And this function is inside the document ready function. So it's not executed until all the HTML has been loaded. So I'm going to save this and come back to the browser, reload, and here we are. So this is the way the paragraphs look from the very beginning with no changes applied. If I click on the first button, the color of the first paragraph changed to red. If I click on the second button, all the other styles have been applied. And that's when you can really see, there's, as I said, there's many other events. We're going to see most of them next week. For the moment, we're just going to use the click event. So we make something happen only when the user clicks. And to be able to do that, then the code has to be inside a function. In this particular case, is the click function. So we're not creating a new function. We're using a function that already exists inside the jQuery library, but we're putting the code inside. So here we create a function. In regular JavaScript, we create a function. We use a word function to give a name to a function and so forth. And this is the code that was happening when the function is run. The function click, it's part of the jQuery library, is triggered when somebody clicks on the element with an ID or second button, and this is the code that that is executed. The other thing I wanted to show you is that in jQuery you can chain functions. So for example, in this particular case, we have, let's look at the last line here inside the function. When we click on, when somebody clicks on the element with an ID or second button, these 2 other lines are executed. When you get to the 3rd line, all the elements with a class of specials are being selected and the text changes to this is a new content. So if we had more paragraph with a class of special, they would have all the same content. But I can keep on making changes to this element. So there's something in jQuery which is called function chaining. So let's say I want to change the background color of that element. So I could do this way. I could select the same thing again, special, and you CSS background, let's make it light gray. That'd be perfectly valid, but there is a better way to do it in jQuery. I can actually remove this part because I already selected a special before, and I'm going to chain this method. So I'm going to bring it over. So I can see that here, special, all the elements with a class of special being selected. First, the text is changed to this is new content. Then this style has been applied. And you can keep on going. You can chain as many functions or methods. Sometimes you cannot use those words interchangeably, although they're not exactly the same thing, but commonly speaking, you can use those words interchangeably. And sometimes if you have too many functions on the same line, it is useful to separate them on each their line. So it's perfectly valid. Remember that white space is meaningless to the browser. It doesn't matter. That's only for the programmer to organize the code in a way that's easy to understand. So this is exactly the same thing. Here's very clear what is the element that's been selected, and these are the functions applied to that element. I want to save that. Okay, and coming back to the second button, I want to show you something else which is potentially pretty confusing. There is a feature in jQuery that allows you to choose or to make changes to the element that's been acted upon. Let me translate that in a little bit more understandable words. For example, for this element right here, the element with an ID or second button, when the user clicks on it, all of this code is being executed. But what if I want to apply some changes to the button itself, to that element that's being clicked upon? That is when you use the selector this. So if I could just say, okay, after you execute all this code, you can once again get hold of the element with an ID or second button and do something to it, like maybe change the text to, I don't know, click again. But instead of doing that, I could actually, instead of using again second button, the jQuery, the JavaScript engine has to search through the entire document to find again this element with an ID or second button. So there is a shortcut. Because it's already been selected here, I can remove this completely and I enter the word this, meaning whatever has been clicked on. Let's say instead of using an ID, this was a generic tag name. Maybe whenever there are buttons, whenever somebody clicks on any button, this would happen. So if I use the generic button word, that will be applied to the specific button that's been clicked on. Let me make this a little bit more clear. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create another button below here. And I'm not going to give it any ID. And I'm going to say, I'm going to close the button. And I'm just going to say third button. Okay. So I want to make this a little bit more generic. So I can either click on the button that has an ID or second button, or I can click on any other button and the other changes will be applied. So if I change this from an ID to the element name button, you see no hash, no dot in front of it. So this is neither an ID nor a class. Then this code will be executed, and then the particular button I clicked on would have its text changed to click again. So let's verify that what I'm saying is correct. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to reload this. Okay, so if I click on the third button, you can see all the changes being applied. Let me reload that. If I click on a second button, the one with ID or second button, the changes are applied as well. And watch what happens when I click on the first button. Remember the first button that was the one that has the regular JavaScript associated with that? All the changes have been applied. This particular change has been applied with document get element by ID, and the other change has been applied with jQuery. Let's go back to this. I think that pretty much covers what I wanted to show you. Once again, as I said, you have a cheat sheet, and do study this. There's so many things we can do. We'll try to go through all of this throughout the class. The first section is what you really want to kind of wrap your head around. Remember, the first thing you do in jQuery, you select something. And you can select it in many different ways. Then once you select it, you have to decide, okay, what I'm going to do to it. I can change the style, I can change the text, I can change the HTML that is inside that element, and many other things. We'll see really cool animation effects that they are a lot of fun to play with. The last thing I'm going to show you is what your homework is going to look like. So I'm asking you to create 3 paragraphs and to have 3 sets of buttons that do something to it. The first set, when I click on the add text button, I keep on adding text, and I just give it a color of red so it's a little bit more obvious that it's easy to see. I can keep on clicking on this button and more text is added, and when I click remove text, all the text is gone. Then I have another set of buttons that if I click on the first one, I add an image, and I keep on adding an image to the first paragraph. When I click on remove image, all of the images are gone. The last button uses toggle class to add and remove a class to the paragraph. So when I click on it the first time, a class is being added to all the paragraphs, and the class is being defined somewhere in my CSS. And when I click again, the class is removed. So toggle class, not add class, remove class, but toggle class will allow you to do that all with one button. And I think that's it for this week. Until next time.